People who are pursuing their degrees in philosophy, psychology, sociology, or acting, they can be successful, but the chances for them to be successful and wealthy are way less than if you go to engineering. I was born in Soviet Union time. My dad would go and travel all around the world because of science degree, right? So he's been basically showing the great things that you can accomplish being the scientist, being in STEM. Around 94 was very hard times in Armenia. There was no electricity, cold winters. I remember I had to study under the candlelight. I was very much inspired to move to America, knowing that there is the country of opportunities.
Welcome to the Soulful Entrepreneur podcast. I'm your host, Lucy Stepanyan. We have a very special guest today, a super cool, empowering female leader, Senior Director of Engineering of Data at Slack, Susanna Khatchatrian. Thanks for joining us today, Susanna. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Lucy, for having me. It's a pleasure being here as well.
Thanks. I want to start by talking about your career choice. Back in the day, obviously, in Armenia, it was an unconventional choice, right? Not a lot of females went to STEM degrees. What was the motivation behind going into STEM specifically back at that time?
Yeah, great question. You're absolutely right. When I started my my bachelor's degree in computer science in Yerevan State University, back then, the class was like 60 people out of 60, maybe 10, maximum 10. I think I'm telling more than it was less than 10 were female. And applied math, right, was not a conventional thing. And I would say all the credits goes to my dad. My father, he's a mathematician, cryptographer, well-known mathematician. He's also a member of Academy of Sciences, which means he's academician. So I've been kind of coached and inspired by him from day one when I was born. And he's been always kind of telling me the importance of math and science. My uncle was also a mathematician. My family is like big in science and math, and I've been fortunate being grown up in that environment.
Yeah, amazing. But okay, I'm going to challenge you. I was a rebellious kid, and say if my dad would say, go into STEM degree, I would probably say, nope, I'm going to the opposite direction, which is probably what happened as well. What was the reason you decided to trust your dad and go in that direction?
Excellent question. Actually, to be honest, when I started, like when I was growing up, like as a teenager, the teenager girls, they love to be in like philosophy, psychology, even acting. It was like, there was a time I was telling my dad, I want to be an actress. And, my dad was always saying like, are you kidding me? Do you want to be unemployed? He's been always pushing, yes, of course, you need to follow your dreams, but you are good at math. Like, people who are pursuing their degrees in philosophy, psychology, sociology, or acting, they can be successful, but the chances for them to be successful and wealthy are way less than if you go to engineering. So he's been telling this to me from years, obviously. First of all, I didn't take it for granted right away. But then when I saw like what he means by seeing his lifestyle, like I was born in Soviet Union time. My dad, like I was in the family where my dad would go and travel all around the world because of science degree, right? He was a scientist. He would go to different universities, teach, like lecture, short time, do some research projects with other universities. So he's traveled around the world, the time when not many people were traveling. So he's been basically showing the great things that you can accomplish being the scientist, being in STEM, and that kind of motivated me.
Yeah, so that's his example. But would you say that you found your purpose through this degree and this was meant to be? Or could you say, oh, maybe I would be good at, like, I would be a good psychologist? Or have you had that doubts?
That's a great question. When I look back, I don't regret a bit. And I'm so grateful for my dad for kind of pursuing me. Because guess what? Being a psychologist, being an actress, and being, all these require the skills, which is very similar being a strong leader, right? As a leader, there are times that you need to understand the people that you are managing them. You need to kind of listen what they think and what they say. You need to figure out how to inspire them. Same way, maybe there are days that you are super tired but not excited to deliver some message, but this is important message to deliver. That means you have to do a little bit acting, making sure you are not conveying a message that nobody is going to listen. You want to make sure they listen and understand the causes why you are doing this and that. So I feel like I am implementing all these skill sets in different environments. So I'm still very excited, and I'm very grateful for my dad that he pushed me to go through this career.
Yeah. So in essence, you're using more than just technical skills that you've studied in your degree. It's more psychology, and it's influence, how to influence people, how to motivate people. So yeah, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about your journey from Armenia to the US. I guess you have a very interesting story. You were super young when you moved to the US, right? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it was really challenging. I was 20 years old. I got married super young, and me and my husband moved to a new country with lots of new opportunities. So that was around 94. And that time was very hard times in Armenia. There was no electricity, very little, like every 2 hours, cold winters. I remember I had to study under the candlelight for my midterms at the university. So it was those were the years where, like, it wasn't as exciting as right now in Armenia. Like, you couldn't do much. So I was very much inspired to move to America, knowing that there is the country of opportunities. And the story was very interesting. My dad, one day, he comes with a catalog of University of Hawaii. And when I saw that catalog, I said, what? Hawaii has a university and they have amazing computer science degree. That was basically, I manifested myself. I said, this is where I'm going. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but this is my dream. I want to go to Hawaii and study for computer science. And basically 1.5 years forward, my dream became a reality. So we came with my husband to Hawaii. I transferred to University of Hawaii. It was very hard time because we didn't have much money. The only thing we had, like, energy. We were super young and we were motivated to reach to our goals. And we had very hard, kind of challenging timeline because, again, we didn't have money. Yes, my parents could support me, but they were amazing. They just wanted me to come up to speed on our own, and I'm very grateful for that. And we worked super hard the first 10 years, like from 20 to 30, to reach to the state that we could say, okay, now we have a house, now we can actually do some other fun activities. So my 20s was very hard. My 30s was great as growing up our son and also focusing on my career. And the 40s was actually starting enjoying the life and, the ways like growing the career, as well as the enjoying to see how our son moved from university to full-time employee and starting working independently and things like that.
That's amazing. A quick question before we get back to, like, after your move, what was this process like to actually move to the US? You had to take some tests and exams and get the transfer. Did you get a scholarship? What was that like? I think a lot of our listeners would be interested.
Actually, no, I moved first because of my husband. So he moved to Hawaii. He had an opportunity to move here. So I moved first without transfer. And then what I was able to do once I was in Hawaii, I applied to University of Hawaii as a transfer student. Then I had to get the credentials. Back then, Yerevan State University didn't have much website. So I had to go and convince these people that this is actually university with my credits. But luckily, because applied math is very strong on math and science classes, basically in a 2.5 years, I was able to get my computer science degree in Hawaii, because all the credits are basically in math and were transferable. And that was very useful for me. So yeah, basically I applied, I went to short interview, I did TOEFL test, but because I needed to do as a foreign student, but I didn't have to take SAT or anything like that because I was already a transfer student. And in 2.5 years, I got my undergrad computer science degree.
Amazing. So you didn't have to take any SAT, just the TOEFL test. Did you get a scholarship or did you have to finance
Oh, that's
yourself?
a great question. So the first semester, again, back then it was cheap. So first semester, my actually dad, very grateful. He paid for that. But after that, because I had a 4.0 GPA, I was able to get scholarship plus, because back then we weren't working, I got also financial aid. So between scholarship and financial aid, I was able to finish my degrees the rest of 4 semester without paying any penny out of our pocket.
That's important because I studied here on a scholarship and it was a full scholarship, but I also had to work because I didn't have, the means to support myself. So it was super challenging as well for me. I know the struggle.
It's really challenging. I would give big credit to my husband. So when I was doing my computer science, that was full-time job because you have to code day and night. It's really hard, not easy. And I was lucky that he was working super hard. So basically, I finished my career, like my degree first, then he started, and then we were just supporting each other, but he would always put me first to finish, but then he would come. So I would give huge credit to my husband because I didn't really have to work during those 2.5 years, which was very useful and helpful for me.
Your husband is Armenian, right?
Yes.
That
know each other
usually
yes.
Wow. That usually doesn't happen among Armenian husbands,
100%.
Right?
100%.
Their careers first.
You are absolutely right. And my husband is such a different person. He's super humble. He's like, his values of life are different than traditional Armenian men. For him, like, he supporting me is important. Like, he was like seeing the value being successful equal as him being successful. So he never competes. He never feels like he needs to have a higher titles than me. And for that, I've been super grateful and, lucky having him as my life partner. And we've been married for almost 30 years now.
Wow. That's another success story right there. Maybe another podcast on your personal life as well. Let's talk also about your, again, your personal life in terms of motherhood. You had a child quite early on as well, right? So how did you balance out having a kid, having to work, and also doing another degree? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was very hard times. You are absolutely right. So I was 24 when I had Eric, and today actually I was talking to him. So he's now almost 26, and I was telling Eric, can you imagine? I have 26 years of professional, experience working on the companies for well-paid jobs. And he said, "Oh my God, Mom, it's my age." I said, "Yes, absolutely. My first job when I was pregnant with you. I remember when at Uniden, my first job was in Hawaii at Uniden right after the college." And I remember, I was writing my code, and Eric was, making in my stomach, making all these moves. I said, "Okay, Eric, I need to concentrate. Leave me alone." I also, I was making a joke with him before he got his bachelor's degree, saying, "Eric, this is your second degree, because when I got my bachelor's degree, you were in my stomach. So you got once with me, and now this is your second one." But back to your original question, absolutely. I think the most important thing which helped me, obviously, I was younger, and also motivation. Motivation is such an important thing, making sure that I had set of goals. I really wanted to get my master's degree, and I knew that if I get it earlier, it will be helpful, because I was still in my late 20s when I did that, and IBM was paying for it. So basically, I'm very grateful for IBM. They fully paid my master's degree from Carnegie Mellon, which was very expensive back then. So I felt like I have to do it. And because of that, I had to work also full time. So basically, I was writing code during the day for work, and I was writing a code during the night for my school projects. And the reason how I could make that happen, besides being motivated and resilience, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Again, back to the support system. I had a great support system. My mom was helping me. There was at that time, they were already moved to the LA area, so they couldn't help me every day. But there were times like for my midterms and finals, my husband would pick up my son and drive to my parents for 3-4 days. So then I can focus on my midterms and finals. And again, my husband was super supportive because on weekends, I couldn't do much. I had to study. And he would take our son and take him to zoo, birthday parties, other activities while I could focus and study. So it was hard. It was hard. There were days I had to cry because it was so hard. I was so tired. But luckily, with the support system I went through now, looking back, I'm so grateful that I was able to do it.
Yeah. And this was your master's in computer science
Carnegie
at
Mellon.
Carnegie Mellon, right? Do you have regrets doing that degree, or would you say like it was worth it? It was worth the pain and the struggle?
I don't regret a bit because it helped me in multiple directions. Number one, like it's a well-known university. So basically I have a stamp on my resume which opens lots of doors to opportunities. So that's the first one. The second one, Carnegie Mellon is amazing in kind of learn by doing. That's the methodology. And that's why I think I was able successful to finish because I didn't have to study like for exams, like you study one night and then next day you forget. No, it was all project based because they understood like people actually remember when they do something versus they learn something, memorize something, right? So everything was on project. So it was also role based assignment. So I would act as a engineering manager or quality manager, and we had assignments, we had deadlines, the requirements would change. Like the managers, our professors would come and say, hey, we need to, add more features, or hey, we need to ship this in 2 days faster. So they were making as much as possible real life experience for us. And it was amazing because at the end of the day, all the things I learned those 2 years, I'm applying even now. And that also boosted my confidence after I finished my master's degree. It boosted my confidence. Okay, I was acting as an engineering manager at school. I can actually be an engineering manager in school. And that kind of brought the confidence for me to go and talk to my manager back then, say, hey, I'm open for new opportunities and I want to move on to different direction.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you gained confidence. But nowadays, there's a lot of people question the traditional education a lot, right? So they say, well, it's not really useful. It's so expensive. And you had the opportunity, it was paid by the company, but not everyone has that opportunity. Would you recommend someone going in, let's say, who has a bachelor's and who really wants to have a leadership position? Would you recommend that they go into a master's and do their master's degree and pay for that?
That's a great question. Obviously, it's also like how much, whether for me it was free, obviously, if you had to pay, let's say back then it was 60,000, but now it's like 200 or whatever thousand, right? Is it worth it or not? I would say it depends what you want to be. For example, my son, I'm not recommending him to do master's degree. He's not kind of into the place where he wants to move to the leadership roles yet. I want him to continue like just learning by doing, right? So you can learn a lot by just working on the right projects and showing that you know that skills. But many people do their masters. I would always recommend like my mentees if they want to maybe, become product managers or executives or things like that. I think getting like an MBA degree potentially could be helpful, not just because like you learn all these executive skills in terms of communications, planning, forecasting, execution, but it's also you are building a network. And as you move up in your career ladder, the network is such an important factor, and you cannot do that. I mean, you still can do it by taking online classes, but it won't be at the same level as you go to university and you build the network via your classmates and your teachers, etc.
Interesting. You have a very positive outlook on life. It's interesting. Have you always had this positivity in you? Were you always this way, or did you manage to develop it through struggle and hardship?
That's a great question. I think I've been always positive person, and I'm lucky with that way because positivity brings the positivity around me. Like I always try my best to look on the positive side or the brighter side of everything, because I am the person who's also like, if I am not convinced and I'm not excited and I'm super sad, I cannot make anything happen. And it happened through my career. There were times like I was super stressed. I had to work. It was before Slack. I had to work like 6 a.m. and meetings because I was managing a team in Europe and I was managing team in India. It was really hard. And I can, like, those times I realized, like, my life, my health is much more important than that. And I made sure that I never go back to the situation where I hate my life and I'm just trying my best to do it. And that's why I feel like positivity is so important, being positive and focusing on things that matters to you, the focusing on things that makes you exciting, and like kind of cutting the rest from your life is really important. And I encourage people to do that.
Yeah. But you still work at a high pressure job, right? You have a lot of responsibility, obviously, in a leadership position. You have people under you. How do you manage your stress now? Have you come up with certain techniques or routines that help you do that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say I'm like, guru at that, but I'm trying my best. So I have few techniques. So number one thing, what I do is, you can see my Peloton here. So I do my Peloton in the morning. So I have my exercise routine, which helps me to kind of get the blood moving. And that also brings the positive energy. So morning exercise is very important to me. I religiously do it pretty much every morning. That means I make sure that, luckily now I don't have teams in Europe or Japan or somewhere else. Like I don't have to do 7 or 6 a.m. meetings. So my meeting starts at 9. So that's helpful. I also block my lunchtime. It is religious. People, they know. Maybe there are some exceptions, but people, they know that lunchtime is my like block time. And it's not like I need 1 hour to eat, obviously not. But eating is very important for me. Like even if it is 10 minutes, I want to make sure I have the time to eat, because when I'm hungry, I'm angry too. And I don't want to be angry as a leader. At the same time, it's also time for me to kind of recharge, maybe go for a walk, get ready for the second part of my afternoon. Many days I have like 10 meetings, right? Like 5 meetings in the morning and 5 afternoon. And having that kind of break where you mentally prepare yourself. Okay, this second half is like just one-on-ones, or we have a customer meeting, or there is an incident review meeting. Like I kind of mentally prepare myself. So then I know like how I go and present myself for all these meetings. I also have time for me to recharge. So I bring back the positive energy to those meetings.
Yeah, that's important. How do you get the mental work done? Because I know from my work as well, we have so many meetings. And when you have a lot of meetings, it's really difficult to do the actual analytical mental work that's needed to be done. Do you block time for that as well? You have like blocked
100%.
times?
100%. If I don't plug time, basically everyone will start grabbing my time. So I don't have an executive assistant, but I am kind of acting my executive assistant. When I block my time, I also say like, maybe there are some focus time, which is okay. If something urgent, I can schedule over. But then I have block times which says do not schedule, meaning like, for example, I wanted to do quick prep for this, like the hour before that, I said, do not schedule. That way I can focus mentally. I can understand what I want to say, what not to say. It's really important. As you said, like we have like executives have so many meetings, and making sure that we have time, whether it's a presentation to like, okay, what's our, quarterly planning presentation, or presentation to going and talking to our customers and things like that. It's important to have the time so you can focus on it, because after 6 o'clock, my brain is dead. And I'm trying very hard not to work on weekends and nights. And that's another great perk we have at Slack. Same at Salesforce. This is the company where values people like work. Actually at Slack, we have this saying like, work hard, then go home. When pre-pandemic, when we had our offices, we wouldn't have ping pong table there or anything, because we want you to, when we are at work, we want to fully do our job, not like getting like, ping pongs, this and that. It's not like we are not encouraging people to socialize. They should, but we want people to go home and get rest after work. We don't want them to work after hours or over the weekend.
Yeah. So you have this specific boundary between work and rest, but you also work from home sometimes. Does that make it difficult to have that boundary? Because I imagine from my personal experience, it's super hard to have that.
Actually, that's a great question. To be honest, like yes, of course, after pandemic, I would say now 80% of my time I work from home. Sometimes I have to go to office, especially now we have team all around United States and Canada. Even if I go to office, I won't see many people. So I think it depends on the routines. I have my routines kind of nailed down. The goodness for me working from home is that I can do my Peloton in the morning, because otherwise I would be super late if I do it like, right? I need just 5 minutes from my bathroom to come to sit in front of the computer. And same thing, like for lunch, I could go walk, etc. So I think it helps me to be even more productive because I don't get interruptions. I know these are my work hours. And I am very specific, like during the work hours, I don't get, I mean, of course, if I need to go turn on the laundry machine, this and that, I would do it. That's flexibility, but I try hard and I cannot usually have meetings, this and that. I am really focused, like my work hours and then after work hours. And that helps with my also mental well-being. Otherwise, if you blend all together all the time, that means you are either always working or you're, always doing something else besides you have to do the work. So luckily for me, I was able to discipline myself to kind of separate that, even though, yes, my bedroom is also my office, but I am separating it by hours, basically.
Very interested to learn about your leadership style. What kind of leader are you? Are you inclusive leader? Are you supporting? Do you micromanage people? I mean, it's hard to accept certain things, but it's so interesting to know your point of view. What type of leader are you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say, so I'm following these 3P principles, and I'll give it credit to Ginny Rometty, who used to be IBM CEO. And the 3P principle is around passion, purpose, and personal development. I'm big, as you've seen, like I'm positive, like I'm passionate. If I'm doing something, I'm excited. You invited me to come and talk here because I was excited. I said, that sounds cool. I'll do it. And I want to make sure that I understand what makes exciting to people that I lead. And I want to marry that passion to the person, to the purpose, right? Like we are running a business. It's an organizational goals. How I can say, hey, you love to go and talk and present, hey, guess what? There are interesting customer presentation opportunities and things like that. So marrying passion to purpose is really important. And third, the most important thing is personal development. People need to constantly grow and learn. And if they are in the environment, they're constantly learning and growing, they are excited, they are motivated, and they are staying. So that's my basically philosophy. I'm building that environment. In terms of whether I'm a micromanager or not, again, it depends on the situation. I hate micromanaging. Nobody wants that. But there are some scenarios where you have to do it. Let's say there is some project is not running the way you expect to run, then you need to figure out like, okay, what's missing, etc., asking right questions, etc. So you are more involved in that project versus maybe that there is another project where it has a very strong leader and they know what they are doing. You don't need to go and be involved. So I wouldn't say like, and I hate when people micromanage me. So I understand what people like, what people don't like, but at the same time, we need to make sure we are running a business. And if there are scenarios you need to get your hands dirty to move the project in the right direction, you have to do that as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. And being a leader also means that you're asserting yourself and you're creating reputation for yourself. Have you had any challenges as a female leader to assert yourself, assert your voice, make yourself heard in this organization or in your previous roles? And how have you built your credibility within the organization?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So when I look back, I wouldn't say the assertiveness, I had problems as a female leader. I've been very fortunate being in the companies all the time, whether it's IBM, then Slack and Salesforce, where I never experienced that kind of, environment where I'm not being supported as a female. But what I have personally experienced as an immigrant, and the reason is not because I'm getting discriminated as an immigrant, no, is because my communication skills are not as strong as a person who was born and raised here, who's been going to speech and debate classes in the high school. And I think that's the area which I've been learning and improving throughout the years, understanding like first making sure focusing on the storytelling, making sure that I can like whatever I'm trying to explain, everyone can understand, and making sure I get people's agreements. So I would say being an immigrant was harder for me in this environment versus being a female.
Yeah. And what did you do to make sure that you work on yourself or work on your communication skills? What steps have you taken in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, when I started my career, I've been doing lots of I was more like as an individual contributor, I was doing lots of coding and not going and talking to people. And there was very important project where I basically did 90% of technical work, but I didn't present, someone else presented, and that person got full credit. That was a great lesson for me to understand, nobody care. I mean, they care, but like you need to really go and speak up for yourself. So that was an excellent lesson for me, saying, okay, maybe even if I don't feel comfortable going and presenting in front of people, I should start taking the responsibilities. And my first step was going to do my master's degree, because I knew when I do that, I had lots of opportunities to present. And from that, I moved to the managerial roles, where as a manager, again, you have to do lots of presentations. It wasn't comfortable at the beginning. And, I'm still not, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but the experience like matters, right? Trying and then failing, learning on your failures and trying again. And constantly, that's a muscle. The communication presentation skill is a muscle, and it only improves when you try and try and try, and then you perfect it.
Yeah. And what has your journey as like, if you go back to when you just started at Slack and you were just building your team and now versus now, how have you grown and what qualities have you developed within that span of time?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So just a background. So I started Slack 5.5 years ago. I was already well-established manager at IBM. So I was managing managers and teams at IBM. But when this opportunity at Slack came, which was basically becoming the founding manager for Product Security Foundations team, and what that team was responsible is to build secure by default libraries and services for Slack. The traditional product security team is just consultants. They go and review the code, they review the features and give recommendations like how they can make it more secure, where this team is basically backend engineers going and actually building these libraries and services to make Slack the product more secure. So that was fantastic opportunity for me. I knew basically I only had one amazing technical person when I started the team, and I had to grow it. So when I left from one, it became 10 people. And obviously that time I was just managing individual contributors. I had to build a team charter. I had to hire the team. I had to make sure we constantly have the right processes on execution and also delivery, and making sure that we can make it repeatable over the years. And that was a great experience for me, because basically I had to get my hands dirty in many different things. So when almost 3 years ago, this opportunity came for leading the data engineering team, I was first hesitating, because basically I built my baby and I didn't want to let it go. But then I realized for me, I'm not learning as much as I was learning the first 2 years. And I wanted to continue my growth, my career growth. And luckily, Slack and Salesforce, they are very good in supporting people in internal movements. And because it's better for them, I moved from one team to another versus moving to another company. And that was kind of great opportunity, because they saw my leadership. They knew I'm capable of managing managers. And there was an opportunity. I went for interviews. I passed it and I got the opportunity. So obviously managing individual contributors is completely different than managing managers. And actually now I have some managers who also manage managers. And I had to kind of change the way I've been operating as a leader. because I have to now I need like I have to focus on my scalability instead of execution. I have to focus how I scale others to do what I could do very well as a manager. So like figuring out the right kind of uh, mentoring, coaching opportunities, giving the project opportunities. Like I would just say, hey, we need to run internship program and don't do much. Where before I would just create the whole program and figure out what to do. I was giving people opportunities to learn and do it while I would just coach and guide them. But then I wanted them to be in the driving seat and deliver results. And that's also amazing. Because it's like you are 10xing your leadership power. If you empower other leaders to be successful leaders as you used to be, that's amazing. And that's what I'm trying. I'm not saying I'm excelling at it yet, but that's the area which I'm excited to continue my focus on growth.
Interesting. So you're basically teaching others how to be leaders as well, apart from being a leader on your own. It's interesting how does being Armenian play into your leadership style? Those things usually don't have anything to do with one another, but sometimes our cultural background kind of impacts us as leaders, right? Have you felt the impact of your culture on your leadership style or not so much?
I would say I have, and I would say a few things. So number one, as Armenians, we're resilient, right? We went through like history, right? Like I am the genocide survivor, right? From my dad's side, my grandfather, he escaped from Turkey and he was dressed as a girl, and great other Turkish people were actually helped my grandfather and my great-grandmother to escape. So basically this resilience, like, that's something very important skill I think we have in our DNA. Another thing, like, being hard workers, right? Like Armenians are super hard workers. Like you go to Armenia, you say everything is amazing, and you don't see like, people are proud to do the right work, and they don't say, oh, it's hard. They'll figure out how to do it, right? They won't say, oh, I'm not going to work because it's hard. They'll figure out like what skills they need to gain to work. So I think those are the things come from Armenian heritage. Another thing, taking no for an answer, especially was born and raised in Soviet time, huge bureaucracy, right? Nothing was given to you on the plate. So always we had like, that's something I feel like in one way we are lucky we were born in that environment, because that helped me so much to navigate through like unknowns, especially in bigger organizations like IBM, where you really need to understand, like who are the people, how you need to navigate. There are things you need to get it done, but it's not going to be super easy. You won't take no for an answer. Like one person says no, you figure out other ways and make it happen. So I think this is all because of Armenian heritage. That's what I think.
Interesting. You said that we are hardworking, and I definitely agree with you. But would you say that Armenians are more hardworking when they are outside of Armenia versus when they are inside of Armenia?
That's great.
I've noticed that tendency a little bit. I was wondering if you have.
Question. Actually, I would say it depends, but you are right. So because why it is that, right? Because when we're outside of Armenia, we feel like, okay, I was always afraid to become homeless, right? Like from day one, you say, okay, if you don't work, you won't have place to live. So you need to work hard. Where when you are in Armenia, you already have, most of people inherited their homes from their, grandparents or parents, etc. So they don't have that fear of being homeless, right? They don't have that fear of not getting support because there are neighbors always going to help them, or someone else, aunts and uncles, etc. And I think that probably it's a true factor. It can be there. But at the same time, you also see, like, even in Armenia, right? So you see like the way like the owners of restaurants, like they would build these amazing restaurants, or they build this amazing business, or even nowadays, like, the engineers, like, they are amazing engineers in Armenia and very hard workers too. But I would say you're absolutely right. It will be almost impossible to find like a lazy person. I mean, they are still, I'm not going to say vegetarians, but you won't find lots of lazy people in America, because they cannot afford to be lazy, where they can afford to be lazy in Armenia.
Yeah, I know what you're referring to. I've seen some cases in LA where people really
Exactly.
don't care. They take advantage of the system. And so, yeah, but let's not get into that. So I've heard something you said, which is interesting. So basically, anxiety really pushes you to do better. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, 100%. Again, interesting story. So when I was in Hawaii, I was helping with the Food for Life program. There was a Food for Life program where basically we would go and distribute food for homeless population in Hawaii. And I've done it almost a 1 year. Like we would go and distribute food. And I would say that was the best motivation for me because I was still a student. I still didn't have anything, right? That was like, okay, definitely I don't want to be one of these people. Of course, there are unfortunate situations as well, but that an anxiety, like that, like this, like scared being homeless or like not having the money to do whatever, that was number one motivator for me, to be honest. That helped me to get where I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like you need to treat anxiety as superpower and just use it in a way that's going to propel you versus push you back. But
Yes.
it's really difficult. I think that for myself, I do have anxiety from time to time, as we all probably do, but it can be debilitating, right? It can make you not want to do anything and not move forward because you feel like, there, it's pointless. I'm not getting anywhere. So sometimes that happens, but just talking to you, it makes me think of really your personality and your mindset is one of there are no limits. You don't really put any limits, and I think I had the same conversation with Vachov Sepian in the first podcast episode, and he has the same mindset. He doesn't set any limits into where he can go and what he can achieve. So it's not like, oh well, if I achieve this, that's enough for me. No, it's not like that. I can push harder until I get to wherever I get to. Is that the case?
100%. Sky is the limit. 100%. Anything so far I manifested, I want it to be like X and Y. It happened to me. And I think that's like an advice for like younger generation. Actually, like, the sky is the limit. Be mindful and know what you want. Obviously, you want to follow your passion and purpose, but yes, of course. Maybe you'll apply to a school you wanted to get in. You might not get in right away. You can try again. Or you get to another school, and guess what? You might end up gaining lots of important skills, etc. So the setback, right, whether not getting like the promotion the day you wanted or not getting, the job you wanted, should not stop you to try again. Because anytime you fail, you're actually learning from it, and then you are becoming even better, and you are
Yeah.
trying again. So anytime you have that mindset that there is no limits, and yes, maybe for one person it will take 1 year to get there, for another person gets 5 years, but as long as you really know what you want, you'll get there.
Yeah. And you said you manifested certain things in life, like whatever you had your mind set to. What do you think is the one quality you would say, maybe not one, maybe a couple of qualities that you think really contributed to you getting what you want in life?
Perseverance, for sure. Perseverance is one. And I would say, yeah, that's like number one quality, like knowing what you want, not giving up, and continuously trying your best and getting there. Another one is also not being, trying, leaning on others, figuring out who else can help you to get there, right? You cannot do everything by yourself. You need to figure out how you work with others that will help you, or also even work for you to make sure that you get where you want to go. So those are the two things I would say help me.
And honestly, last thing I'll say about this is when I listen to your story, it all seems so easy. Like you were here, then you jumped from this position to this position. It seems like a seamless and like that a straight line that's going up. And it's so easy jumping from one position to another, just from someone who's listening to your story. But was that the case or not so much?
No, that was not the case. Of course, it's easier to say when you look back, But even my last this job, so when I took my leadership job for data engineering, obviously this was the first time. So right now I manage team around 50 people with 7 managers right now. When I started, it was way less. So I expanded the team and management. But that was like, the biggest ever and most challenging job that I took over. But I knew I'm excited and I'm passionate. And that when I started, actually, one of the leaders went to the paternity leave. That means I had to do my job as learning this new environment plus that person's job. So it was really hard. Like if you like those 2 months, like 2-3 months, that as I was learning the whole data engineering landscape and also managing managers landscape, I also had to manage individual contributors. Like very hard to kind of focus what is the right things and not to overwork and not to overcommit. But after 2 months, like that's how it usually works for me. Like I start something, it's really hard. Like it takes me 2-3 months to figure out what to do. And then after that, I have my formulas. Like I focus on the right things which matters, and I just work on that. I try not to overwhelm myself, and I focus also on small, like wins. It's so important to constantly kind of be motivated and motivate others, like by saying, okay, you know what, when I started nothing was here, now we have this and that. Maybe it's not 100% where you want to be there, but there are things that makes you to make the progression is there, and focusing on those wins are also important. So those are the things kind of help me to move and navigate through difficulties and learning, and then also making it a little easier afterwards.
Yeah. And when you think about, let's say, a successful day, because you have, again, a tough job, a lot of responsibilities, and there's a lot at stake, and you have a lot of outcomes and KPIs you need to achieve. If you think about in the span of a day, if we can say, okay, this is a super successful day, I've achieved so many things, how would that day look like? Like, what are some of the things that you, or your mindset, or you have achieved in those days that you would say, great, productive day?
Let's say, obviously, it depends. Let's say we are at the quarterly planning right now, we are reaching to that. Successful day would be that we had a meeting. One of the meetings when I meet with all the managers, we discuss about our methods and measures and agree what we are planning for that quarter. So making sure that's aligned and we are in agreement and we are not putting too much stuff on the plate, which is not achievable, but we are also not making it super light, which everything is achievable. So making sure we have the right balance. So having that kind of accomplished in one day, and maybe having couple one-on-ones where I kind of help to inspire whether ICs or managers on the right goals and tasks they need to accomplish, and maybe having one cross-functional meeting where I'm trying to kind of either convey what we need from that other team to deliver for us, or getting feedback from them if they are our customers, like what is important for them for us to focus and deliver. So those are the things I would say, like customer impact, like, or we are impacting other cross-functional teams, organizational executional goals, and also people management goals, like doing some one-on-ones on mentoring sessions and inspiring them.
And what gives you, out of all of that, what gives you most energy?
And that's a great one. I would say, obviously, one-on-ones. It's interesting, especially mentoring. Like I didn't realize, so I'm officially mentoring several leaders, and right now, majority of them are female, which is great. Like they look at me as a role model, and they ask me, like, "Hey, would you like to be my mentor?" And I say, "Sure, let's do it." And that is so fulfilling because they all come, they ask with interesting questions, and nothing you can be prepared. They ask real life questions on problems they are trying to solve. So I'm helping them, but at the same time, I'm learning a lot. So that's fulfilling, because mentoring is like not one direction. It's not like, you are only giving them, you are actually taking a lot from them because you are learning their experiences. So I'm basically expanding my experience by 3x, 4x, how many mentees I have, because that's like something else on top of my managers that I manage, that I can learn what they are doing and I give them feedback, but I also learning from it.
Yeah. So you can tell the progress that they're making. It's kind of your progress, and so you've planted the seeds and now they're growing and sprouting. I think a lot of our listeners would be interested to know about, let's say, especially young women who are getting into the STEM degrees just now. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to break into the tech industry now in this day and age?
Yes, I think first of all, making sure that you go and attend some networking events. If you are in university, make sure you go to your career fairs. You go to actually talk to the people, to hiring managers. If there are meetups, you go attend the meetups. Networking is such an important thing, and I'll give you a few examples. For example, I'm a big fan of internship programs. I've been running several internship programs at IBM, and I've been helping with many internship programs at Slack. And I'm also a speaker when I go and present like other future interns to come and talk work with us. And one example is like many times, like after these presentations, so like people come and these students, they come and start asking the right questions. They show the interest. They want to understand how we run the business. They also show like, oh, they're excited indeed. Or when I used to manage security, they're excited in security. And guess what? When they come and ask the right questions, we remember them. And when there are 100 applicants that apply for the like 2 internship positions, guess whom you are going to be more interested to bring in? The ones that you already talked to them, the ones you already seen their face, the ones they already show the interest and excitement. Obviously, they have to go through the interview process, make sure they are, fitting all the technical skills. But those are the people that I will highly consider to bring in. And that's my advice to all the future, like students or people who are like high school kids, like networking. It's such an important thing. Understanding the hiring managers, getting opportunities to connect with them, because when you apply for a position and there are 100 people applying it, it's really hard to get in. But if you build a network and people actually know you, it will be much easier for you to get the position.
Yeah. And obviously, there are a lot of variables that go into choosing someone for a position, right? But if you had, let's say, 2 candidates, like one who is great on paper, like super great on paper, but you have never met them, and then another candidate who is not as great in terms of like the qualifications and the background, but you've met them and you found them super interesting and exciting to work with. Who would you choose? Obviously, you would have to interview both of them, but if you saw like the interview, both nailed the interview, who would you prefer in this situation?
The one whom I spoke to, the one who showed the interest and enthusiasm, because the skills is very important, but the motivation is even more important. I've seen throughout the years of my management experience, there are times I manage people who know everything, but they are not motivated. That means they are doing half of the job they are supposed to do. And I know people who are like, maybe don't know 100%, but they are motivated to learn and they go above and beyond. And that's the thing, which is one of the important factors. I focus on people like understanding, are they excited? Are they going to come every day and say, okay, I'm learning something, this is important, and I would just choose that person versus the person who is perfect on papers, but I don't know. They might be perfect in real life, but they might not be motivated. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah. And apart from motivation, what qualities are a priority for you to hire a person?
Yeah, motivation is number one, obviously. The curiosity, are they curious? Do they want to learn constantly and grow? And then the other one is analytical skills, obviously, and also the collaboration skills. Like, do they know how to work in a team? It's such an important factor, right? Like, when you are at school, maybe you are not, yes, you might have some team projects, etc. But the most important thing, the professional life, nothing is happening by itself. It's all about how you work with others and how you, and higher levels you go, how you uplift others to do the work better. So that's such an important quality. And even many companies, they don't just rate their employees on what they accomplish. They also rate their employees on how they accomplish, because the how factor, how they do it, it's so equally important as what they have done it. So those are the qualities I will look for.
Yeah. And when we talked about this a little bit about education and importance of degrees and everything. For you, it played a pivotal role, right? Especially the master's degree. But when you are hiring someone, do you look at their degrees and qualifications? Do you find that as an important quality? Let's say because you meet people, young people today, and they code really well. They don't really need education anymore. They can just go on YouTube and to take courses online and have really great skills. But to be hired and have a job and to be hired by you, technically, do you think that they would need to have a degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, things are changing now. I would say depends where they are, right? If they are just, younger individuals, the thing which I value from university is that, that means you have the perseverance, right? That means that you worked like during the nights and like, you delivered your projects on time. So there are some kind of skills that university provides you, right? Like with the deadlines, this and that. So you prove yourself that you were successful doing that. So those are the skills that maybe not technically you are right. Like now you can go and learn coding, like you don't need to go to universities, but the other skills like how you work, how you meet the deadlines, this and that, those are the things which is easier to prove when you have university degrees versus like the person who is saying, well, leave me alone, I'll just go figure out and search and Google. Now we have AI tools and I'll do this. I personally still think that some kind of degree is important just to show that you can survive in rigor environment, and that's very important because at work nothing is easy, right? You have deadlines and you need to work with people. So how you can show that with just projects, that will be hard. I mean, it is possible, but it's not as easy as showing that you have some degrees.
Yeah. And you rightfully mentioned things are changing now, right? With the fast, rapid development of AI and everything. What do you think the labor market is, how the labor market will change, especially in the tech space? What do you think are going to be the main changes in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. AI is taking over of lots of things, even for my day-to-day activities. For example, for me to quickly understand what's happening with Project X, I can just, I'm using Slack, which is awesome. I say, hey, give me updates on Project X. And the AI will give me all the updates, what was discussed in this channel. Or there is some project, I heard the name. What is Project Coral? I can ask Slack, and then they'll say, oh, Project Color is this, and give you details and the links, etc. So it helps me to basically be a more efficient leader without even DMing anyone else, just asking some questions to Slack. Or let's say I have to write some promotion packet for the person. As I mentioned, English is my third language. So even though I've been in this country for many years, still my grammar is not perfect. But guess what? AI, I can write my half-baked, sentences, and then I say, hey, make it much grammatically appealing. Guess what? AI does it for me, which I love. Before I had to go ask a human to help me. Now I don't need to ask any human. AI is helping me. So I think this co-pilot, now I gave you examples for me as a leader, obviously similar for the engineers, or you are technical support, like there are customer questions. Yes, you could always Google and search, but the AI is actually helping you better find the exact question and give you answers, etc. So I think this co-pilot with AI is going to make the workforce much more efficient. Obviously, there'll be some jobs probably eliminating, but I don't imagine jobs in engineering and science. You still need the mindset to ask the right questions and utilize the right AI tools to make your job much faster and efficient. But it's completely different way everything is evolving. When I started my career, the internet was a new thing, right? And then after that, the smartphones were new things, and now the AI is a new thing, and we've been evolving. So this is the next evolution phase.
Yeah. So a lot of people have a lot of anxiety around, oh, AI is going to take my job, and what am I going to do in the future? What skills do I need? What would you say are the skills that you need to evolve in this day and age and be competitive in this labor market?
Yeah, I know, like before, like saying, so I understand. And if you read, and lots of people say, well, maybe you don't need to have programming skills, AI can help you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's true. But at the same time, if you are an engineer and you understand how different systems work together, you can utilize AI to make you more efficient. But I don't think AI is going to take over all the programming and software engineering. I mean, maybe eventually, but not in the next 5 or 10 years. So I would say, yes, don't be afraid of AI. Utilize them. Use them as much as you can, because it's going to only make you better, right? Whether in the communication skills or anything else, computation or anything, just utilize it. Because guess what? Something you had to do in 5 days, now you can do in 1 day, perfect, because of AI. Then you can utilize to do 4 other things. And that will help you to also show your impact to the organization, because they were supposed to do 1 thing, now you can do 5 things. So you should not be afraid of AI. You should be the super mind, utilizing AI in the way which will help your work much to be efficient.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I think last thing about this the futuristic questions is female leaders or female young girls who are going into STEM degrees and with a mindset of, I want to be a future leader in this space. What advice would you give them?
I would say, make sure you have a good mentor. Make sure that you have clear career goals and aspirations. Never give up. Constantly learn and develop yourselves and your skills. If you are in somewhere that you feel like you are not learning something or you are not motivated, just move somewhere else. Never stay in the place that you feel like it's either bad for your psychological health or you are not learning. So as long as you do that, constantly learning and growing and having the right support system and have the goals and motivation, you'll go very far.
Nice. I love that. Last round of a bit more personal retrospective questions I wanted to ask you, just to peek in a bit more into your soul. What would you say were the most exciting projects that you worked on, and what were some of the lessons that you gained from them?
Yeah, I'm going to date myself, but I'll say a few exciting projects I worked. So first one, which was my first job at Uniden. And as I mentioned, when I started my career, I was doing, so I started at Uniden. Uniden is the company where they provide phones, radar detectors, and many other things. Lots of actually phones, that landline phones, was produced by Uniden. And back then, the internet was a new thing. When I started my first job, it was in 98. And it was still newish place. Like in United States, obviously from 94, everyone had pretty much internet, but not in places like Brazil. And my first project was I build a smart card, which would basically deduct time in the Uniden computers for people to use like internet. So basically you would go to internet cafe, have this, pay for the smart card, and then plug into your Uniden computer, use the internet, and then once your time is out, obviously we would give like some error message, like warnings, hey, you have 5 minutes left, etc. And once it's all done, they couldn't do anything. Like now you read, like you think they're like, oh my God, like is there a place you can go and the internet, it stops working for you because you didn't pay? Yes, back then that was something. So that was a cool thing because I had to learn how to, that was very low, like C programming. I had to learn how to read smart card, write to smart card. I also had to put some user interface for the internet, etc. So it was cool. That was first project. The next one, I was at IBM, which again, as an individual contributor, back then, the user interface was very limited. Like you didn't have all these complex and exciting frameworks that exist now. Like now the front-end developers, they have lots of things they get for free. Back when I was a front-end engineer, I didn't get any controls for free. I had to paint and render, writing the code for that. Like I had to build this multi-dimensional slicer for your dimension, for your cube, which is basically for online analytical processing, making sure that we can slice and dice and dimensions the way we want to visualize our reports. And for that, I had to build basically I had to a dialer that the users can click and move down and up to slice and dice the dimension. And I had to do it all from scratch. Like I had to add a listener, I had to paint every second. And it was like challenging because right now, as I mentioned, you can get it all free, but I had to build from scratch. So that was interesting when I even wrote a patent for that. So those are the ones that are exciting. And finally, that time I was already managing the interns. Our interns did it, but the iPhone just came out. So we came up with the project where application, you can scan the food and say whether that food is safe for you to eat or not, because it would go check with the FDA website, and FDA would publish saying, hey, these cookies are on recall, etc. So we'll give you green or red light. So those are the cool projects that I worked in the past. That was exciting.
Nice. A bit more esoteric question. You have obviously like achieved a lot in your career. You have some titles that you've held previously and now. If you were stripped away from all of those titles and all of your successes and achievements, what would you be left with?
Knowledge, experience, and skills. Which is so important. And I always say people, the titles doesn't matter. The job is very important, but make sure anytime you go and do something, you take a job, you gain skills, because nobody is going like, yes, people can get fired, people can get laid off, but what people cannot lose is their knowledge and skills. That's an experience. It stays forever. And those are the things which I'm grateful I have.
Yeah, and I love that because skills are transferable, right? It never dies out. It's always growing and growing. It's like an infinite loop you can add to the skills, and I love that part. If you could go back to a 17 or 16-year-old Susanna and give her advice, what would that be?
Yeah, my first advice would be good job. Like, whatever you think you are going to do it. My second advice would be, like focusing on the communication skills earlier versus like by lessons learned, like focus on the communication skills. And my final advice, it's more like, I just have one kid, and probably I would love to have the second one. So, maybe, when I reached my 30, like after my master's degree, I could have thought of having the second kid because, the more children, the fun. Yes, of course, it's more headache, but probably that's what would be the other advice.
Nice. And my last question is, if let's say your life is a novel, and what would be the next chapter, your next chapter in this novel?
Yeah, that's like, okay, what do you want to do next? And I would say, so I'm still enjoying what I'm doing since I haven't perfected my leadership skills at scales. I'm still figuring out a few things, so that's great. But at the same time, I feel like I've been working for 26 years and I need some kind of sabbatical. Greatly, Slack provides that, Salesforce provides that. So I'm thinking maybe end of the year, I take some sabbatical, which will help me with my soul searching. And finally, I haven't done much advisory job. So I would love to start doing that consulting, advising, being in the board members. Like I am part of nonprofit organization, AIVA, Armenian International Women's Association. I'm part of that board in San Francisco chapter, and I've done that for more than 12 years now, but that's different. I'm more interested, in startup, maybe they need some advice from the data side or security side or efficient collaboration skills or leadership skills and things like that. Before, I wasn't paying much attention on that, but I feel like I am at the stage of my career, I would be interested to focus on that as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Susanna. I really hope that this conversation is going to benefit a lot of young women, especially in Armenia, who are thinking of going into STEM degrees and STEM careers and thinking about their career trajectories and how they can achieve leadership positions in the future. And I'm sure they will, because you really are a role model. And it's an honor to have had this interview with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy. It was really fun answering the questions. And I really also hope that even one thing all these future leaders can learn from me, it would be awesome. Thank you so much.